Dr. Lena Vargas sat alone in the dimly lit observatory, staring at the endless night sky. The room hummed softly with the sound of computers and the quiet clicking of instruments, measuring signals from deep space. For years, Lena had worked tirelessly, scanning the heavens for anything unusual. She had seen many strange things before, but tonight felt different. There was a pattern in the signals, a rhythm that was almost like a heartbeat. She leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the controls carefully. The signal was faint but steady, coming from a galaxy far beyond the Milky Way. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. Someone, or something, was out there, sending a message across the vast emptiness of space. She checked the coordinates again and again, making sure there was no mistake. The signal had to be real. Lena knew she could not keep this to herself. She called her assistant, a young man named Tom, into the room. "Tom, you need to see this," she said, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. Together, they analyzed the signal, trying to decipher any hidden meaning. Hours passed as they worked, the sky outside slowly turning from dark to the soft blue of dawn. Finally, Lena noticed a pattern within the signal, repeating sequences that seemed almost deliberate. She began to decode it, using every tool she had. As the message became clearer, Lena realized it was a call for help. Someone in another galaxy was reaching out to Earth. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. How long had they been sending this signal, and why had no one noticed before? She felt a mixture of fear and responsibility. This was not just a scientific discovery. This was a moment that could change everything. Lena knew the world would not believe her immediately. Governments and scientists around the world were skeptical of extraterrestrial life, but she could not ignore what she had found. She contacted a few trusted colleagues, sharing the data and urging caution. While some were excited, others were skeptical, insisting that it could be interference or some natural phenomenon. Lena could not waste time with debates. She decided to act. Using the observatory's powerful transmitters, she prepared a reply. A signal strong enough to cross the unimaginable distance between galaxies. She encoded a simple message, introducing humanity and offering assistance. As she sent it, she felt a sense of hope mixed with dread. What if their intentions were not peaceful? What if this was a trap? She could not know. The days that followed were filled with anticipation and anxiety. Every day, Lena and her team monitored the sky, looking for any sign of a response. News outlets began to catch wind of unusual signals being detected, and public interest grew. Conspiracy theories and debates filled forums and social media. Despite the attention, Lena focused on her work, analyzing data and preparing for whatever might come. Then, late one night, something changed. The signal returned, but it was different this time. The pattern was more complex, more urgent. It was clear that someone had received the message and was responding. Lena and Tom stared at the monitors, unable to believe what they saw. The response was unmistakable. It was coming closer, across. The world observatories reported similar readings. Scientists, governments, and even amateur astronomers were watching the sky with bated breath. The sense of anticipation was almost unbearable. What would arrive? Were they friends or something? Else entirely. Lena could feel her heart racing as she realized the magnitude of the moment. Humanity was no longer alone, and the universe had just become a much larger, more dangerous place. She knew that everything would change from this point forward, and there was no turning back. The night sky seemed to stretch endlessly, filled with possibilities and threats beyond imagination. Lena could only watch and wait, knowing that the story of humanity was about to take a dramatic turn. Months had passed since Dr. Lena Vargas, her team, sent the reply to the distant galaxy. Each day, they watched the sky with both hope and fear. Strange things began to happen on Earth. At first, they were subtle, flickers of light in the night sky, sudden electromagnetic pulses, and minor gravitational anomalies that caused strange tides in the oceans. People began noticing unusual patterns in weather and magnetic fields. The media called it unexplained phenomena, but Lena knew better. The response had come. One evening, Lena was in the observatory with Tom, analyzing data from multiple telescopes, when something extraordinary appeared. Bright streaks crossed the sky, moving faster than anything they had ever seen. The streaks converged in orbit above major cities, and soon large shapes became visible. They were enormous, shimmering vessels, unlike anything humanity had built. People across the globe stopped and stared, some in awe, others in fear. Governments issued warnings and tried to prepare for possible contact, but no one could predict what would happen. The alien vessels hovered silently, emitting no sound, no message, just their immense presence. Lena and Tom watched in disbelief. As the ships arranged themselves in strange patterns, almost like they were studying Earth, attempts to communicate failed. All the usual radio frequencies produced only strange noises, unlike any human language, and I realized that understanding them would be difficult. Over the next few days, scientists and experts tried to analyze the alien signals. Some thought it was a type of music or code. Others believed it was a form of biological communication. The vessels seemed alive, responding to human actions in subtle ways. When cities tried to send signals of welcome or caution, the alien lights pulsed and shifted in response. Fear spread across the world. People wondered whether these visitors were friends or enemies. Military forces were put on alert, but most leaders hesitated to act. No one wanted to start a war with beings whose power was unknown. Lena spent countless hours studying the signals, trying to decode even a small part of their communication. One night, she noticed a repeating pattern in the pulses. It seemed deliberate, almost like a heartbeat or a rhythm. She shared her findings with Tom, who helped create a program to analyze the signal in more detail. Worked tirelessly, sometimes forgetting to eat or sleep, driven by curiosity and urgency. While humanity watched and waited, the aliens continued their silent observation. Birds and wildlife reacted strangely near the ships. Electronic equipment malfunctioned around them. Even satellites showed strange interference, as if the aliens had control over certain aspects of Earth's technology. In cities where the vessels hovered directly above, people reported a sense of unease, and almost physical pressure on the mind. It was as if the aliens could sense human thoughts and emotions. Lena began to suspect that the visitors were not just observing the planet, but also studying its inhabitants closely. The more she studied the signals, the more she felt that the aliens were trying to understand humans, perhaps to judge whether they were worthy of trust or cooperation. Weeks passed, and then the unimaginable happened. From the alien vessels emerged beings that no one could have predicted. They were not small or delicate like humans had imagined. They were enormous and terrifying, resembling the monsters of human folklore and nightmares. Some looked like dragons with scales and wings that glinted under the sun. Others were shadowy creatures with long limbs and glowing eyes. The streets of major cities filled with panic as the first sightings were reported. People ran and screamed. Military forces attempted to respond, but conventional weapons seemed ineffective. Lena and Tom realized that these creatures were somehow linked to the alien vessels, as if they had been brought here intentionally. Scientists speculated that the aliens had tapped into the human imagination, creating physical forms of fear. Itself, panic swept the world. Governments tried to organize evacuations, but chaos reigned. Airports, highways, and cities became crowded with desperate people seeking safety. In the midst of confusion, Lena continued her work, convinced that understanding the aliens was the key to survival. She and her team mapped the movements of the vessels and the creatures, hoping to find a pattern. It became clear that the monsters were testing humanity, attacking strategically and retreating when challenged. Lena realized that this was a form of study, not random destruction. Fear and courage were being observed, measured, and perhaps even quantified. In the chaos, small groups of survivors began to organize themselves. People with knowledge, skills, and courage formed militias to protect others. They developed strategies to fight back or avoid the creatures. Lena contributed by providing data on the aliens' behavior and the monsters' patterns. Despite the terror, a sense of determination grew among humans. Many realized that if they wanted to survive, they would have to face their fears and work together. Lena understood that the world had changed forever. The arrival of the alien vessels and their monsters had shattered the illusion that Earth was safe or alone. Humanity now had to prove its strength, ingenuity, and resilience in a universe that was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And so, under the shadow of the enormous ships hovering above and the monsters roaming below, humanity took its first steps into a new era. An era where survival depended not only on weapons and strategy, but also on courage, unity, and the ability to confront the unknown without surrendering to fear. The monsters had arrived, and Earth had changed forever. Dr. Lena Vargas watched from the observatory as reports flooded in from all over the globe. Cities were struggling, governments were collapsing, and ordinary people were facing the unimaginable. The creatures that had emerged from the alien vessels were terrifying, and no one had ever seen anything like them. Some had wings that spanned hundreds of meters. Others moved like shadows with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce the soul. It was as if the aliens had reached into human minds and pulled out nightmares, giving them form and life. Lena knew that understanding these monsters was crucial. She worked with Tom and a small team of scientists to analyze every detail of their behavior. The creatures moved with purpose, often appearing in groups, testing human defenses, and retreating before complete destruction. Lena realized that the aliens were studying humanity, observing how people reacted under extreme fear and stress. In cities like New York, Tokyo, and Paris, chaos reigned. People fled in every direction. Streets clogged with cars, and emergency services struggled to keep up. Military forces tried to respond, but their weapons were largely ineffective against the monsters. Lena watched videos sent from survivors trying to find patterns in how the creatures attacked. Some monsters seemed drawn to places with high population density, while others targeted structures or technology. In the midst of this, small groups of humans began to form organized resistance. Scientists, engineers, and skilled civilians came together to protect communities and find ways to fight back. Lena provided them with information about the monsters' behavior, showing which areas were safe and how to anticipate attacks. Despite the terror, humanity showed resilience. People adapted quickly, creating improvised shelters and weapons. They learned to recognize the creatures' signs and to avoid unnecessary confrontation. In one city, a group of survivors discovered that reflective surfaces and bright lights could confuse a monster long enough to escape. Lena documented these findings, hoping they could be applied worldwide. Meanwhile, the alien vessels continued to hover above, silent observers of the chaos below. Every movement of the monsters was controlled, every attack purposeful. Lena theorized that the aliens were running experiments, testing how humans reacted when faced with their deepest fears. It was a brutal and dangerous lesson, but it also revealed human ingenuity and determination. In quieter moments, Lena thought about the message that had started all of this. The distant galaxy had reached out to Earth, and humanity had answered. But the response had been more than just contact. Two had brought challenges that no one could have predicted. As the days turned into weeks, Lena's team noticed a strange phenomenon. Some monsters were interacting with humans in unexpected ways. Certain groups of survivors were ignored, while others were followed or studied more closely. Lena believed that the aliens were not just testing fear, but also courage, collaboration, and problem-solving. One night, as Lena and Tom monitored the skies, a massive shadow moved over the city. A new type of monster appeared, one larger and more intelligent than the others. It seemed aware of human tactics, adapting its behavior with each encounter. Lena realized that humanity would need to innovate quickly or face total destruction. The world was changing, and old rules no longer applied. Communities formed networks of communication, using radio signals and messengers to warn each other of approaching danger. Lena helped coordinate some of these networks, providing data on the monsters' movements and patterns. Every small victory, every life saved, became a sign of hope in a world filled with fear. Yet, the monsters were relentless. Entire districts were destroyed and millions were forced to flee. Lena saw both tragedy and heroism every day, and she recorded every story. Knowing that history would remember this time as the moment humanity truly faced the unknown. The aliens remained silent, their motives mysterious. Were they studying humans for a reason, or were they testing Earth for something greater? Lena did not know, but she refused to stop searching for answers. She continued to work tirelessly, analyzing signals, observing the creatures, and coordinating with the scattered survivors. Humanity's greatest challenge was not only to survive the monsters, but also to understand the aliens behind them. Despite the destruction and fear, Lena saw sparks of courage everywhere. Ordinary people became heroes, risking everything to protect others. Children were guided to safety, families reunited, and small victories were celebrated like monumental achievements. Humanity was learning, adapting, and growing stronger, even in the face of unimaginable threats. Lena knew that the real battle had only begun. The aliens had brought monsters to test Earth, but they had also revealed the resilience and ingenuity of humans. Every challenge was a lesson, and every survival a triumph. She looked at the sky, knowing that this was just the beginning of a larger story. A story that would test the limits of courage, intelligence, and cooperation. Humanity would have to rise to the occasion or be consumed by fear. And Lena vowed to be part of the effort to ensure that no matter what came from the stars, Earth's people would stand strong and face the unknown with determination. The world had grown quieter in some ways, but danger was everywhere. Dr. Lena Vargas and her team had discovered that the monsters were not just mindless beings. They were intelligent, testing humanity in ways that made survival difficult. In the midst of chaos, small groups of people began to organize themselves. Survivors shared food, built shelters, and created ways to warn others when monsters approached. Lena worked with them, sharing knowledge she had gathered from observing the creatures. She taught them how to avoid areas where the monsters were likely to attack and how to use light and sound to confuse them temporarily. These small successes gave people hope. In cities where the creatures were fewer, communities rebuilt roads and shelters. The humans used whatever technology they could salvage to create communication networks, keeping each other informed about movements and safe zones. Despite these efforts, fear was constant. Every night, shadows moved across the city, and people waited for the terrible sounds of monsters nearby. Lena and her team noticed that the creatures often returned to areas where humans had shown courage. It seemed that the aliens were studying bravery and resourcefulness as much as fear. Lena realized that the key to surviving was cooperation. Communities that worked together fared better than isolated groups. People shared resources, helped each other, and made plans to defend themselves as much as possible. The team also discovered that the monsters avoided areas where humans showed organized behavior. This small observation became a cornerstone of survival strategies. Over time, humans began to fight back. They created traps, barriers, and decoys to slow the creatures down. Weapons were ineffective, but strategy and clever thinking gave humans an advantage. Lena worked with engineers and military leaders to design devices that could disrupt the monster's movement temporarily. These tools gave survivors the chance to escape, save others, and regroup. While the immediate threat was deadly, Lena understood that the real challenge was long-term. The aliens would not stop watching, and the creatures were only part of a larger experiment. Every human action, every survival decision, was being observed and recorded. The team realized that understanding the aliens' purpose was essential if humanity hoped to survive in the future. In the midst of this struggle, stories of heroism emerged. Ordinary people risked their lives to save others, and these small acts of courage spread hope throughout communities. Lena recorded these stories, believing they were proof of humanity's resilience. She often thought about the message sent to the distant galaxy. It had brought monsters to Earth, but it had also shown what humans were capable of. Each challenge forced people to adapt, to innovate, and to cooperate in ways they never had before. Night and day blurred together as Lena and her team worked tirelessly. They monitored signals from the alien vessels, tracked the creatures' movements, and coordinated with survivor groups. They began to see patterns in the monsters' behavior. Some were drawn to human fear, while others were attracted to signs of leadership and organization. Lena realized that the aliens were observing all aspects of human behavior, testing the limits of endurance, intelligence, and morality. In one city, A group of survivors created a safe zone using walls, traps, and sound signals. They managed to keep the monsters at bay for weeks, providing a place where people could rest and regroup. Lena studied their methods and shared the strategies with other groups. Cooperation became the most effective weapon humans had against the creatures. As time passed, people began to trust each other more. Small victories built confidence, and courage spread. Lena noticed that even children were learning to help and protect others. Every person had a role, and survival depended on everyone working together. Despite the hope, tragedy continued. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed, and countless lives were lost. Lena felt the weight of responsibility heavily. She could not stop the monsters, but she could help humans survive. And that became her mission. In quieter moments, Lena wondered about the aliens. What were they looking for? Was this test for the entire species, or just a study of selected humans? She could not know for sure, but she understood that the aliens valued intelligence, adaptability, and bravery. These qualities became the focus of survival strategies. Lena and her team continued to experiment, testing different methods to protect people. They created alert systems, built stronger shelters, and trained survivors to think quickly under pressure. Every improvement meant more lives saved and more hope for the future. As months passed, humanity grew stronger. The monsters still roamed the land, but humans were no longer helpless. They had learned to cooperate, to plan, and to act decisively. Lena realized that the aliens had not only brought destruction but also opportunity. Humanity was discovering its potential, facing fears and rising to challenges it had never imagined. The world had changed, and every day was a battle for survival. Yet Lena saw that humanity was beginning to thrive even in the midst of chaos. Courage, intelligence, and cooperation were the keys to facing the unknown. And as long as people continued to learn, adapt, and help one another, there was hope that Earth could endure whatever. The aliens sent next, the human. Resistance had grown stronger. Dr. Lena Vargas and her team had learned more about the monsters and the alien vessels. Hovering above Earth, they understood that the creatures were highly intelligent, testing human courage, cooperation, and problem-solving. Lena knew that fighting them directly was impossible, so humanity had to rely on strategy, ingenuity, and teamwork. One day, Lena discovered a clue that could change everything. Analyzing the alien signals, she noticed a pattern that seemed to indicate a way to disrupt the monsters temporarily. It required a precise combination of light, sound, and electromagnetic pulses, something no single group could accomplish alone. Lena shared her findings with leaders of the survivor networks. They realized that a coordinated global effort could create a containment field that would neutralize the monsters, long enough to give humans a chance to reclaim their cities. Planning began immediately. Survivors from different regions communicated through radios, signals, and messengers. Each group had a role, whether to provide power, create pulses, or distract the creatures. Coordination was difficult, but necessity made humans adapt quickly. Lena traveled to one of the largest cities under siege to supervise the operation personally. The streets were in ruins, buildings reduced to rubble, and smoke rising from fires that refused to die. Survivors were scattered, moving cautiously to avoid the monsters. Lena saw fear everywhere, but she also saw determination. People who had lost everything still found ways to help each other and contribute to the plan. On the day of the operation, tension filled the air. The monsters sensed the humans' activity and began moving aggressively. Lena watched as groups executed their parts, shining bright lights, triggering sound devices, and emitting electromagnetic pulses. The monsters reacted violently, testing each defense and adapting quickly. Some humans were injured or killed, but their efforts slowed the creatures just enough. Lena knew they had to reach the heart of the city where the containment field generator would be activated. The streets were dangerous, but survivor groups worked together, guiding each other and using the distractions to their advantage. Lena moved forward with a small team, navigating through debris and darkness. They faced a massive shadow looming above them, a creature more intelligent and powerful than any before. It seemed aware of their actions, attacking with precision and strategy. Lena and her team improvised, luring it away with light and sound devices. Every step was critical. The generator had to be activated to complete the operation. Finally, they reached the site. Lena and the engineers connected the equipment, running calculations and checking signals. The monsters were close, surrounding the city, sensing human activity. Lena felt a surge of fear but pushed it aside, focusing on the task. She activated the generator. A pulse of energy spread across the city, hitting the monsters and freezing their movements temporarily. The effect was immediate. Many creatures halted, some falling to the ground, others retreating in confusion. Humans cheered quietly, taking the opportunity to move to safer areas. The operation was risky, and casualties had been high, but it worked. The containment field gave humanity a chance to regroup, plan, and recover. Lena realized that this was not a final victory, but a turning point. Humanity had proven that it could fight back intelligently and cooperatively, even against superior forces. The aliens were watching, and their intentions remained unknown. But humanity had sent a message. Fear would not dominate them. As the field remained active, survivor groups worked quickly to fortify their positions and rescue those trapped by the monsters. Lena documented every step, knowing that knowledge was now one of humanity's greatest weapons. Cities slowly began to stabilize as humans learned to cooperate more effectively, combining courage, intelligence, and strategy to survive. The alien vessels remained above, observing, but for the first time, humans felt that they had an advantage. Humanity's ingenuity and determination were clear, and Lena hoped that this would be enough to face future challenges. The night ended with quiet, tense relief. The monsters were contained for now, and survivors shared stories of bravery and ingenuity. Lena reflected on the lessons learned. Courage, cooperation, and adaptability were humanity's most powerful tools. She looked at the sky, knowing that the aliens had tested them, and humans had risen to the challenge. The war was far from over, but for the first time, Lena felt that hope was real, and that Earth's people were ready to face whatever came next with determination and unity. The sky was quieter than it had been in months. Dr. Lena Vargas stood on the roof of a partially destroyed building. Looking at the alien vessels hovering silently above Earth, the monsters had been contained, and humans were finally gaining control over the chaos. The world was battered, cities were damaged, and millions of lives had been lost. But there was hope. Humanity had learned to cooperate, to strategize, and to survive against overwhelming odds. Lena reflected on how far people had come. From panic and fear, humans had risen to show intelligence, courage, and unity. It was not just survival that mattered now, it was the ability to rebuild, to learn, and to prepare for whatever might come next. The alien vessels remained above, watching. Lena could not tell whether they were satisfied with what they had seen or planning the next test. She knew that the aliens' intentions would remain a mystery for now, but humanity had proven itself worthy of observation. Across the world, survivors worked tirelessly to restore some sense of normal life. Food, water, and medical supplies were shared. Communities were organized with roles and responsibilities, and even children had ways to help. Lena continued to coordinate with different groups, sharing knowledge about monster behavior, alien signals, and strategies for maintaining safety. Technology recovered from destroyed cities was repurposed to help rebuild communication networks. Humanity had discovered its ability to innovate under pressure. Stories of bravery spread rapidly. People who had faced monsters, saved others, or sacrificed for their communities became legends in their own time. Lena documented these acts, knowing that they would inspire future generations. Even in the darkness, humans found reasons to hope. In the weeks following the containment of the monsters, scientists studied the alien vessels more closely. Signals from the ships remained cryptic and complex, but Lena and her team were beginning to understand them. There were hints of intelligence, emotion, and perhaps even a desire to communicate beyond simple observation. Lena wondered what messages might be revealed if humans continued to learn and adapt. One day, a new signal arrived, clearer than before. It was not threatening, but seemed to acknowledge humanity's resilience. Lena analyzed it with her team, and slowly they began to decipher words, symbols, and patterns. The aliens were trying to communicate, to observe not only fear but understanding, intelligence, and cooperation. The realization filled Lena with both awe and responsibility. Humanity had passed the first test, and now it was time to prove that they could engage, learn, and adapt further. Survivors worked together to rebuild not only cities, but also trust and community. Fear was still present, but it was tempered by the knowledge that people could overcome almost anything when united. Lena traveled from one settlement to another, providing guidance, teaching lessons learned from the monsters, and encouraging collaboration between groups. Slowly, the world began to feel like a place where humans could thrive again, even under the shadow of the alien observers. Lena often thought about the monsters, how they had forced humanity to confront fear, loss, and the unknown. But she also saw what they had revealed about human nature: courage, ingenuity, and resilience. These were qualities that the aliens seemed to respect, and Lena was determined to ensure they were strengthened. Communication with the aliens continued to improve, revealing glimpses of knowledge from beyond Earth. Lena realized that this was not only an opportunity to survive, but to learn from a civilization far older and more advanced. The possibilities were endless, but caution remained essential. Humanity had survived tremendous trials, but the universe held more mysteries and dangers than anyone could imagine. Lena reflected on the lessons learned. Fear would always exist, but it could be managed. Cooperation, intelligence, and courage were the true weapons against the unknown.